The new Breath of the Wild, or the sequel to it, it's not necessarily going to be related to Majora's Mask or inspired by it. What we showed you currently is a little darker. That quote, given by Eiji Aonuma in an interview after the first preview of what was then known as the sequel to Breath of the Wild, has lived on in infamy. There are a lot of different reactions to it. Quite a lot of people took that quote, compared with the seemingly darker tone of the trailer, and took it as gospel that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be an extremely dark Zelda game. I think the direct comparison to Majora's Mask, which is well known for its darker atmosphere and story, really got people thinking that Tears of the Kingdom would be something of a Majora's Mask 2.0. Other people were quick to point out that the quote is often taken out of context and is misunderstood. I've even seen mentions of a mistranslation, although I was not able to confirm any of that in my research. Regardless, this quote is at the center of a lot of controversy about Tears of the Kingdom. First, though, a word about our friends over at Dossier who worked with us on this video. Oh, I'm starting to wonder if opening my shop in this forest village was a good idea. I haven't gotten a customer in days. Maybe I'll move to Castletown. It doesn't seem like anything bad could ever happen to their marketplace. What can I do for you?
It's an emergency! I have a big crush on Saria. I just love listening to her play the ocarina, and I need to confess my undying love to her. But I don't have the courage. Do you have anything that can help? I hear her childhood friend Link is heading back to the village, so I need to confess before he sweeps her off her feet.
Let me check. Oh, I have just the thing. Check out this scent from Dossier. This woody tobacco scent will make you smell mysterious, like you hail from deep in the lost woods, and like you're brave enough to explore the forest temple yourself. Once Saria gets a whiff of this woody tobacco scent from Dossier, she'll be head over heels.
Wow, it smells great. This'll do the trick for sure. What's the cost?
You can get some iconic scents from an affordable price from Dossier between $29 to $59.
You have a deal. Thanks, you weird little green guy.
Ah, another satisfied customer. Oh, and another.
It's an emergency! I have...
Let me guess, a big crush on another Kokiri?
Yeah. How'd you know?
Call it intuition. Who is it?
You know the Kokiri that stands around all day trying to lift rocks? He really gets my heart spinning. He never quits, no matter how long he goes on without succeeding. The rock is too heavy for him, but he just keeps trying with no end in sight. How could I not fall in love with a modern-day Sisyphus?
Oh my, I see your point. Lucky for you, I have just the thing. Try out this scent from Dossier, Floral Violet. The fruity and flowery smell will evoke thoughts of Princess Zelda herself, and there's no way a hot-blooded Kokiri male wouldn't take notice.
Wow, that sounds great! But I bet I can't afford it.
Well, actually, Dossier has a welcome offer for up to 20% for new customers.
Wow! That sounds great! What's a video?
Don't worry about it. I wish you luck.
Thank you!
Another satisfied customer.
Alright, time to spray this on and go talk to Saria.
I can't wait to spray this on and talk to the stone lifting boy.
Hey, you smell really great. When I'm near you, I think of Princess Zelda.
And your scent makes me think you're mysterious and cool.
Wanna go explore the forest temple together?
Oh, I'd love to, but I was going to talk to somebody.
Yeah, me too.
Oh well.
Thank you to Dossier for working with me on this video, and check their info in the description down below. After the first teaser, there would be very little reason for anybody to doubt the idea that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be a dark and brooding game. The entire trailer, from start to finish, was a montage of mystery, unsettling dread, and disaster. From the dank caves of which our heroes are exploring, to the reappearance of Ganondorf in a disturbing zombie-like form we've never seen him in before. And then the separation of Link and Zelda, with Zelda seemingly falling to fates unknown. It's no wonder that this trailer, paired with that quote, left people feeling like Breath of the Wild sequel was going to be possibly the darkest Zelda game yet, and there was no reason for them to think otherwise. Then the second teaser came along, and very little spookiness was shown. It opened with a slow burn of some flowing malice with glimpses of Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, but then it cuts away to our first look at the floating islands, and the tone for the rest of the trailer is decidedly cheery. The only truly upsetting moment is the rising of the castle, and this is, I think, where some people first started becoming really concerned that Aonuma's quote really was misunderstood. Obviously, the moment in which Link and Zelda awaken Ganondorf will be frightening, but this teaser, and Nintendo's marketing after the fact, seemed to push the notion that the bulk of the game was going to rotate around swashbuckling exploration of Sky Islands, with a cheerful and uplifting tone, not a dreadful one. It was adventurous. So naturally, those who were hoping for a darker Zelda became a bit nervous. I don't think the first official trailer particularly helped matters either. It certainly added to the mystery, as the cave art at the beginning hints towards an ancient conflict, and a new figure who was likely a Zonai, but then the back half of it again was entirely devoted to exploring the sky, with not a hint of darkness or dread. In my opinion, the second trailer is where things should start being redeemed for those hoping for a dark Zelda game, as we get a look at a Hyrule that's clearly going through another apocalypse, as Ganondorf orders the wholesale slaughter of Hyrule, delivering his commandments under a piercing red blood moon. However, I think many of the people who want a darker Zelda game were on a bit of a defeatist mindset at this point, as the back half of the trailer doesn't just show more Sky Islands, but it also shows some new mechanics that are downright goofy. Link flying a glider and driving a truck, that is so silly, and it was the death of many people's hopes for a dark Zelda game. And of course, the most recent trailer and gameplay preview really did put the nail in the coffin for a lot of people. Sure, we have a few moments like the re-emergence of Ganondorf, and the whole trailer has a somber air to it, but there was plenty of goofiness to go around, and the overall vibe was a lot more epic adventure than survival horror. The gameplay preview sealed the deal for a lot of people with its mushroom shield and Keith's eyeball, and all over social media I have seen some sort of variation of the following sentence. I'm still really excited for Tears of the Kingdom, but I'm disappointed it won't be darker than Majora's Mask like they said. And that brings us to the reason I made this video. I have seen an insane amount of doomerism from those who are hoping for a Majora's Mask spiritual sequel, and have given up all hope on Tears of the Kingdom being similar to Majora's Mask, or really being dark at all. And the reason I'm making this video is because I want to try and allay some of those worries. The primary concern seems to be that because there is so much focus on the lighthearted aspects of the game in marketing, be it on exploring the Sky Islands, building wacky vehicles, and putting together silly fuse combinations like the Sword Shield, because of the focus on all of these silly, lighthearted things, we're out of luck in regards for our desire for a dark Zelda game. Sure, there will be some dark moments, we've seen a few, but there's a good chance that the darkness will be allocated to these couple cutscenes and then not really factor into the game again, and that the majority of the experience will be lighthearted and goofy, not Majora's Mask-esque. And there are quite a few different angles from which I want to counter this argument. Firstly, I want to talk about the quote and the comparison to Majora's Mask. I'm not usually one to accuse people of having not actually played the games they're talking about, but when people use the Majora's Mask comparison as a way to prove that Tears of the Kingdom won't have a dark atmosphere, it does sort of leave me a little bit convinced that they haven't really played Majora's Mask. Maybe just watched some YouTube lore videos, saw a couple gifs of Skull Kid tilting his head, and assumed they kinda knew what the game was like, but this is something I'm constantly needing to refute. The idea that Majora's Mask is a scary game, because it really isn't. If you're looking for that extremely dark tone that people seem to be feisting for, you're much better off playing Twilight Princess or even the second half of Ocarina of Time as opposed to Majora's Mask, because Majora's Mask is not grimdark like at all. It's actually an extremely cheery and uplifting game the vast majority of the time, and those exceptions are where the horror or the feeling of unease come from. When you enter Clock Town, it isn't a scary place full of dark monsters. It's a bright, colorful, and thriving town full of happiness and life. Everywhere you look, people are just going about their day-to-day lives, worrying about getting the festival ready in time, or getting their band back together, or maintaining their decaying hotel. There's nothing openly dark about Clocktown. That is where Majora's Mask's discomfort comes from. Clocktown has a massive moon above their head on a contact course for the middle of their town, and it's already close enough that it looks like you could spin on it, and it's getting closer with every passing minute, yet the citizens couldn't care less. It's not from a blanket of darkness, or monsters roaming and slaughtering, or any other dark thing that people may be hoping for in Tears of the Kingdom that makes Majora's Mask scary. The terror in Majora's Mask comes entirely from the willing ignorance of the populace to their impending doom. In order to find darkness in Clocktown, you need to look at the seams, in the out-of-the-way locations, or you need to wait until day 3 on the brink of disaster for some worry, fear, and darkness to finally show its face. People talk about how they're concerned about Tears of the Kingdom because of how cheery and adventurous the overworld seems to be, but have you stepped outside of Clocktown before? Because I assure you what you'll find is not particularly scary. You'll find Termina, an overworld that beckons for adventure just like any other. A bright and colorful place that yearns to be explored. In fact, it even has the return of the traditional Hyrule Field theme after its absence in Ocarina of Time. You're looking for darkness in Majora's Mask, you won't find it in the overworld. And that's because, again, the horror and darkness of Majora's Mask is not literal, it's psychological and implied. There aren't even really that many overly scary monsters in Majora's Mask. In fact, Majora's Mask has a vested interest in sort of despookifying scary enemies from the previous game. You have the return of Redeads, but they become literal comic relief. Stalfos come back, but they are now humanized, made intelligent, and given a backstory they can be reasoned with. Really, the only outwardly scary creature in Majora's Mask is Majora. So I think you sort of see my point, don't you? Tears of the Kingdom having an upbeat and even sometimes silly atmosphere, not having a particularly dark and brooding overworld, and even having moments of humor and levity, doesn't preclude it from being dark in the same way as Majora's Mask, because all of those things were also true for Majora's Mask. It also had an upbeat and often silly atmosphere, a bright, colorful overworld that beckoned for adventure instead of suggesting survival horror, and Majora's Mask was absolutely teeming, pouring over the edges with blatant jokes and goofiness and silliness. It just interspersed this happiness and cheeriness with a sense of dread and tragedy. And not only is Tears of the Kingdom still capable of doing that, but I think we've seen some evidence that it already has. Breath of the Wild itself was a game that I think did a good job of hinting towards ominous tones and tragedy while otherwise being upbeat. Every time I walked through a ruin, I would remember that people used to live here until they were all killed. Every champion memory is a bittersweet experience as you fall in love with these characters, and then remember they're all dead, and your primary job is to put their spirits to rest by helping them satisfy their obligations. In Breath of the Wild, you're living in a post-apocalypse with all the melancholic feeling that entails. But with Tears of the Kingdom, we're going to be living through an attempted apocalypse, and we have already seen so many pieces of blatantly horrific imagery and dark tone. In fact, I would feel very comfortable saying that Tears of the Kingdom has absolutely showcased a darker overall tone than Majora's Mask, and that Aonuma's quote was 100% correct. Again, Majora's Mask's darkness is psychological, and it comes in small snippets interspersed through an otherwise obliviously happy world. There were bits here and there in the corner of darkness, like a creepy looking tree or the transformation mask sequence or Pamela's father, that gave a peek to the dark truth of the world. Tears of the Kingdom has clearly conveyed its darkness by having a zombified Ganondorf, under the angriest blood moon I've ever seen, send a bunch of monsters all across Hyrule, commanding them not just to conquer, but to exterminate everyone they meet, and enacting a number of natural disasters all across the land. All the while, one of our main characters falls to a fate unknown. This is darker than Majora's Mask, at least in terms of what we actually see in the world. Again, what I think is happening here is that people are only really familiar with Majora's Mask as the quote-unquote darkest Zelda game, not realizing that the overwhelming majority of the discomfort and horror is psychological, and that for the vast majority of the game, Termina is not particularly scarier or darker than the worlds of other games. But since they're only really familiar with the popular conception of Majora's Mask, they just make reference to it anyways in their disappointment that Hyrule Field isn't a permanent hellscape in Tears of the Kingdom. Even though they're making reference to Majora's Mask, what I truthfully think these people were hoping for is an overworld with changes more akin to post-time skip Ocarina of Time, where Castletown is ruined and Death Mountain bellows angry red flames, while Poes begin appearing all across Hyrule Field. To which I would say, we kind of already have that, we've already seen this. I think Hyrule Castle being yanked out of the ground and floating in the air as a result of angry red malice is a good substitution for the ruination we see in Ocarina of Time. And instead of Death Mountain billowing red smoke, it's oozing malice. That's horrifying. All the while, a massive tornado shreds the homeland of the Rito to pieces. Or perhaps they're referring to Twilight Princess in the way that parts of the world are shrouded in twilight when you first enter them, which is fair enough, but that wasn't very frightening to me. The only one of those segments which really felt that ominous was the one in Kakariko. The rest of them just kind of felt like the other areas continuing to exist, but under a shroud of darkness, which seems to me like how it's going to be during Tears of the Kingdom. We haven't even seen everything there is to show, and I think there's very much a possibility, maybe even a likely chance, that not only will the Blood Moon return to the game, but it will be emphasized in a way similar to something like Twilight Princess. The fourth trailer placed a huge emphasis on comparing the world shrouded in darkness with the world shrouded in light, so I have no doubt that's going to play some sort of role in the game. And it's all of this to say that I really don't understand the worries. They've already clearly conveyed to us a number of pretty horrific elements, and it's very odd to suggest that just because there will also be many goofy and uplifting aspects as well, the dark elements are just not going to be a big part of the game. Every single Zelda game, no matter how dark in tone, has had a hefty share of bright and uplifting aspects as well. Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, they've all found a good balance between lightness and darkness. Don't worry, I'm quite sure that the game with the zombie villain commanding his forces to eradicate all life will have a pretty dark tone, even if there are some goofs and gaffes along the way. If these silly moments are what's killing it for you, maybe check out another game franchise, because I don't think that Zelda will ever be a survival horror experience. What do you think? Do you agree with me that there will be some spookiness in Tears of the Kingdom, and that people are just maybe expecting something that Zelda would never offer and going full horror? Or do you think that people have a point in that they are right to be worried that there will be no dark tone at all, or that it will be really de-emphasized? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support me, you can do so by commenting, liking the video, come follow me on Twitter, come join us on Discord, or if you'd like to support me directly, you can come over to Patreon and join the Subrosian Parade. Stay safe out there, and maybe take a buddy if you go out during the Blood Moon. Regardless of what some people may think, it's a dangerous world out there, and it's dangerous to go alone.